Dinodocus! This is a competitive game in which players will create dinosaurs and will try to keep them around for as many millions of years as possible. Of course, being around for that long means to mutate and to evolve, and the game represents precisely that. And some of the dinosaurs that you will create will look pretty interesting, kind of like this one. Feathers on dinosaurs, finally, yay! Now, you have 4 decks of cards, each representing a different part of the dinosaur. At the beginning of the game, each player draws a card from each and makes their dinosaur. Everybody starts with a free dino, and during the game, when it is your turn, if you do not have at least a dinosaur in front of you, you will get one for free at the beginning of your turn. As you can see, it's really nice because the cards are placed one on top of the other. There's a grayed out area that you're going to cover with the next one. So actually the art will create a dinosaur. Later during the game, you will also switch things around. So you will replace a card with another. So that makes it less practical. But hey, the beauty of seeing your Itrozosaurus, that's or whatever players trying to pronounce the names of the dinosaurs is part of the fun. And that's why the rules insist, and you should insist, that every time there is a dinosaur added to the table, players should say the name out loud. Now, a dinosaur can be a herbivore or carnivore, greenhead, herbivore, redhead, carnivore. A dinosaur will have a total attack strength, and that's represented by the total of the numbers on those claws. So this one has an attack strength of 2, and then each dinosaur will have a defense value, which is the total of the numbers on these sort of like scales here, and this dino has a defense of 3. Then each dinosaur has a strength, a general strength, which is whichever of these two values, attack or defense, is the highest. In this case, this dino has an attack of 2, defense of 3, and strength of 3, because that is the highest that they have. Now, you will have a hand of 5 cards at the beginning of your turn. And when you draw cards from the decks, you can draw in any combination. And suppose I decide to draw 1 per, and I decided I want to get an extra card from that one. But any combination at the beginning of your turn. After you do that, then you can play your cards to either create another dinosaur. If you have 4 cards, 1 representing each part of a dinosaur, then you can create another one. I could just do that, for example. And I just created, I'll show it to you in a second, the beautiful, glorious, epic Dinodocus. Dinodocus. It's a very rare dinosaur, the Dinodocus. With an attack of 2 and a defense of 1. And herbivore also, like probably the worst dino I've ever seen. That's okay. I can also, but I don't have to use my cards to create new dinos. I can use my cards instead to modify existing dinosaurs, mine own or those belonging to the other players. Suppose, for example, that I decide that this one I want it to have more defense and it's mine, then I simply replace that way. Booyah. Or suppose, again, I can play these also on other people's dinosaurs. Suppose, for example, that this is someone else's dinosaur and I don't like that dino to have so much defense. Then I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to replace that with this card. And so it's nice because bad cards that are completely terrible and useless can still be pretty good because you get other people's dinosaurs stuck with them. So it's not really good cards or bad cards. When you get good cards with good values, you want to add them to your own dinosaurs, and the annoying ones, you're going to give them to other people's dinosaurs. When you replace a card from another player's dinosaur, the owner has a chance immediately to evolve that further. That is to play a card from their hand to change the dinosaur, which may be to immediately replace the one that you placed or any other part of the dinosaur's body. So basically, you can change your own dinosaurs only once per turn. You can change someone else's dinosaur also only once per turn, but they get a chance of adding one change in that same turn. After you're done with your turn, playing cards to create new dinos and or mutating dinosaurs, it's time to feed your big babies. Now, herbivores, they take ferns. There is a pool of 4 fern tokens, and that's all that there is. So early on in the game, where there are still fern tokens in the general pool, you just give one to each hungry herbivore. Later, it may be that they will be assigned to other dinosaurs, to other herbivores, and still these herbivores are going to start stealing them from one another. How do you do so? If your herbivore does not have a fern token, you look around the table for possibly an opponent's dinosaur, but you could steal it from your own. You're looking for another herbivore with a fern token whose strength is lower than your defense. Remember, strength being the highest between attack and defense. Basically, you want your defense, you're just sitting there and eating, and you don't care if the other one is better defense or is trying to claw you. You're just there eating and depleting the resources of the area. So that's how herbivores feed. You probably have a sense of how carnivores feed. Now, usually I would not be allowed to exchange the head of a herbivore with that of a carnivore, but in this example, I'm gonna do it anyways. So that I have a carnivore there. The way carnivores feed is by attacking other dinosaurs. Again, usually and hopefully those belonging to other players. In order for me to declare that my carnivore has eaten another, then the total attack must exceed the strength of the target. Again, strength being the highest between attack or defense. So that's the general idea. Herbivores, to steal a fern, they need to have a higher defense than the target's strength. Carnivores, to eat another dino, they need to have a higher attack than the opponent's strength. And once the carnivore is eating another dino, the carnivore is happy. At the end of your turn, each dinosaur that you are able to feed will get one of these cards. The number of these cards in play also changes, so with the number of players, fewer cards, because this is also the timer of the game. These cards will be used for scoring at the end of the game. Each dinosaur that survives a turn takes one of these cards. When the dino goes extinct, then you will get to score these cards in your personal pile. And the way these cards score, as indicated here on the rulebook, is that the longer a dinosaur was alive, the more these cards are worth. Because the first one, they all look the same. They all have these squares here. The first one will be scored only one square of that line. A dinosaur that survived 2, then the second card will show 2. A dinosaur that survived for 3 turns has 3 cards, so when it goes extinct, you will place them that way. So now the total of squares showing is 6. You see, as opposed to if it was 3 dinos that each survived only 1 turn, the total would be 3. And that's how it works, because hey, you've become very popular, been around for so many millions of years. You're kind of like the coolest dino around. And you basically add all of your cards from your dinos in a single line, so it's very easy and intuitive. At the end of the game, you look at the player with the longest timeline, and the player wins the game. And that is basically how you play Dinodocus. Create dinos, change dinos, yours and those of the opponents. Try to have them survive for as long as possible, score points, and at the end of the game, the player with the longest timeline wins the game. When I first read the rulebook, I was a little bit skeptical. I was afraid that the game was just going to be randomness and chaos. And when I first taught the game to my friends, I actually gave them this warning. Look, I don't know if this is going to be a game, if there is a game in here, or it's just randomness and chaos. The general opinion was like, oh, this is a game. This is most definitely a game. And I'll tell you, it's a fun, light game. Yes, with an element of randomness, but a lot less than I expected. Because when you see a hand of bad cards, like, oh my gosh, why was I so unlucky? or why were my friends so unlucky that they're gonna get all of these like terrible cards in their dinos. And yes, maybe they had good ones and maybe they can replace them right away, but that's not always or necessarily the case. There are a lot of times where I put a bad card in there, they can't react right away, and because of that, their dinosaur gets eaten, or a herbivore outcompetes them and steals all of their food. So there are actually a lot more things going on than I expected. I like that you have this decision of getting cards precisely to mess up with other people's dinosaurs or try to create your own, because again, you can, because you collect enough cards each turn to create a new dinosaur. But then that means you're not messing up with other people's dinosaurs and you really want to mess them up. And again, remember, the incentive is to keep your dinosaurs alive for as long as possible because they score better that way. So there are just some interesting conflicting elements there, and conflicting elements in this sense I'm describing as a positive thing, because of course is when you have different decisions that seem similar in interest, then you have an interesting decision, you have an interesting dilemma there. So again, when do I start a new one? How much do I reinforce and improve my dinosaur, and how much do I weaken yours? So there is a nice element of decision there. There's also an element of diplomacy. If you have more than 2 players, then you're definitely going to say, hey, you know what, you could eat mine. Of course you could, I wouldn't even mind. But Bob, if you don't eat Bob's dinosaur, then he may eat yours and mine wouldn't. How about that? And there's going to be a lot of that, which somehow raises to just that right level of backstabbiness, which I enjoy in games, which may be subjective, but just enough that if somebody eats my dinosaur, somebody weakens them, and they maybe even gang up against me, and they do it somehow. Maybe it's the silliness of these funny dinosaurs, maybe it's how fast the game moves anywhere, maybe it's because I have an immediate chance of getting back at them. It's fun. It's a kind of meanness that is closer to friendly banter than actual meanness. Again, it's the level of friendly backstabbiness, and everybody's gonna eat somebody else's dinosaur at some point. Everybody's gonna steal food from herbivores from time to time, and so somehow there's a confrontational element, which, however, is almost more humorous than mean, and I actually personally enjoyed that. The theme is fun. The art is really nice. So I personally enjoyed this a lot more than I thought, and my friends also seem to be very pleased with the game. Dinodocus, yes, there is an element of chaos and randomness, but I find it's perfectly manageable. And there is, again, an atmosphere of friendly banter, of competition, which, again, in my case, or in my group at least, did not really turn into meanness, and was just fun and ridiculous, friendly banter more than anything else. So for a light game, definitely I enjoyed Dinodocus.